Breaking news! Bengals fans, there may finally be some real movement behind the scenes. And if everything that's starting to surface ends up becoming reality, Cincinnati could be preparing to make one of its biggest long-term commitments before training camp even begins. The clues are starting to add up, and while nothing has been officially announced yet, there's enough smoke to believe something important could be happening. If this deal comes together, it wouldn't just reward one of the team's biggest breakout stars. It could also signal that the organization is continuing to operate in a completely different way than Bengals fans have been used to for years. Before we dive into everything, make sure you hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Every day we bring you the latest Bengals news, discussions, and updates. And by subscribing, you won't miss any major developments as this offseason continues to unfold. Now, let's get to what really matters. One of the biggest talking points surrounding Cincinnati right now isn't coming from an official press release or a front office announcement. Instead, it's coming from subtle hints that have started appearing on social media. And sometimes those small breadcrumbs end up telling a much bigger story. The latest hint involved DJ Turner and his representation. A social media post showing a Tom and Jerry image counting stacks of cash, paired with the caption CB1 calculated, immediately caught the attention of Bengals fans. It became even more interesting when DJ Turner himself reposted it and added a simple message: soon. See, that one word was enough to send plenty of fans into speculation mode. While nothing has been confirmed publicly, reports indicate there is mutual interest between both sides in reaching a long-term agreement before the regular season begins. If that happens, we're talking about a contract reportedly worth around 3 years at roughly $21.1 million annually. That would represent a major investment. Not only would it make DJ Turner the highest-paid cornerback in Bengals franchise history, but it would also place him among the highest-paid players at his position across the NFL. Considering where Turner was only a year ago, that's an incredible rise. Remember, this wasn't a player who immediately walked into the league as a finished product. After arriving from Michigan as a second-round selection in 2023, he had to earn his opportunities. Playing time wasn't simply handed to him. He gradually worked his way into a larger role before exploding with the kind of season that forced everyone around the league to start paying attention. Last season completely changed the conversation. He finished among the league leaders in pass breakups, consistently challenged opposing receivers, and developed into arguably Cincinnati's most reliable defensive back. There were legitimate conversations about his Pro Bowl chances before the overall struggles of the defense made individual recognition much harder to earn. That's why the Bengals may actually be trying to act before his value climbs even higher. Think about the timing. If Turner puts together another season similar to the one he just had, or maybe even improves on it, the market changes dramatically. Instead of discussing a contract around $21 million annually, the conversation could easily move closer to $30 million per season. That's an enormous difference. Locking him up now isn't simply about rewarding good performance. It's about avoiding paying even more later. Looking at his production only strengthens that argument. His grading compared favorably with many of the league's established stars. He ranked near the top across multiple categories, including pass breakups, interceptions, forced fumbles, and overall defensive production. When a young cornerback begins appearing near the top of those statistical rankings, teams understand that waiting usually becomes much more expensive. That's why this possible extension makes so much sense from Cincinnati's perspective. It isn't simply paying for what Turner has already accomplished. It's betting on what he could become. And that's where another interesting comparison begins to emerge. There has been growing discussion about whether DJ Turner could take another leap, not just from being a very good young cornerback to becoming a Pro Bowl caliber player, but eventually entering the conversation as one of the very best corners in football. That's obviously an incredibly high standard. The comparison being made centers around Pat Certain. The similarities start with physical tools. Turner possesses elite speed, outstanding athletic ability, natural instincts when tracking the football, and the confidence required to consistently challenge opposing receivers. Those aren't traits every defensive back possesses. One play that continues to stand out involved his interception against DK Metcalf. Facing a receiver with superior size and strength, Turner still found a way to attack the football, win the battle at the catch point, remain in bounds, and secure one of Cincinnati's biggest defensive plays. Those are the kinds of moments that coaches remember. They demonstrate competitiveness just as much as athletic ability. Of course, reaching the level of players like Certain requires more than highlight plays. Consistency becomes everything, year after year, game after game. The belief is that Turner could take another step if the defense surrounding him improves. Better support from the defensive line and improved play across the secondary could allow him to operate in a much more favorable situation than he experienced previously. If that happens, his production could climb even further. We're talking about multiple interceptions, another season filled with pass breakups, limiting opposing quarterbacks to low completion percentages, and potentially entering conversations involving all-pro recognition. If Cincinnati truly believes that ceiling exists, extending him before that breakout becomes official looks like an outstanding business decision. But Turner isn't the only player whose future could soon become a major talking point. Once his situation is resolved, attention naturally shifts elsewhere. Chase Brown remains one of the more interesting names to watch. Coming off a season featuring over 1,000 rushing yards, more than 400 receiving yards, and nearly 1,500 total yards from scrimmage, Brown has become a major piece of Cincinnati's offense. Rather than pursuing an enormous long-term financial commitment, the idea of a shorter extension makes plenty of sense. Keeping one of the offense's productive contributors together without creating unnecessary salary cap pressure would allow the Bengals to maintain continuity while remaining financially flexible. Then there's Dax Hill. His situation is considerably more complicated. Hill shares the same agent as DJ Turner, which naturally creates speculation regarding whether discussions involving one player could eventually influence conversations involving the other. After recovering from injury and finding success playing outside cornerback, Hill has demonstrated significant value because of his versatility. Throughout his career, he has been asked to line up at multiple positions depending on the team's needs. That flexibility certainly increases his importance. The challenge becomes determining exactly how much the Bengals are willing to invest. If Turner receives the extension many expect, the front office must carefully balance future financial commitments across the roster. That's why Hill remains one of the most fascinating situations to monitor. Myles Murphy presents an entirely different picture. Unlike Turner, Murphy didn't receive the same long-term commitment earlier in the offseason, meaning his next season becomes extremely important for his future. Strong production could dramatically increase his market value, whether with Cincinnati or somewhere else. That's another reminder of how quickly things can change in the NFL. One great season can completely reshape contract negotiations. As all these individual situations continue developing, there's an even bigger story quietly taking shape around the Bengals organization itself. For years, Cincinnati developed a reputation for operating differently than many other franchises. Contract negotiations often stretched deep into the off-season. Major extensions sometimes took longer than fans expected. The front office frequently maintained an extremely disciplined approach during negotiations, but this off-season has felt noticeably different. The organization has made aggressive moves that many fans simply weren't accustomed to seeing. There has been significant investment throughout the roster. Major organizational decisions have reflected a willingness to adapt. Changes have extended beyond player personnel, touching different areas of the franchise as well. Individually, each move might not seem extraordinary compared to other NFL organizations. Collectively, though, they paint a picture of a franchise attempting to evolve. That's perhaps the biggest takeaway from everything happening right now. This isn't just about one potential extension. It's about a front office showing signs that it's willing to operate with greater urgency than it has in previous years. Whether those decisions ultimately translate into victories remains to be seen. No contract guarantees wins. No off-season guarantees playoff success. Everything still has to be earned once the regular season begins. But from the perspective of many Bengals fans, seeing the organization aggressively attempt to keep its young core together represents an encouraging development. If DJ Turner signs before training camp officially gets underway, it would reinforce that message even more strongly. Instead of allowing negotiations to drag into the season, Cincinnati would be rewarding one of its emerging defensive stars early while potentially saving significant money down the road. That would represent smart roster building. Now, all eyes remain on what happens next. Will the social media hints turn into official paperwork? Will Turner become the newest cornerstone of Cincinnati's defense for years to come? Will Chase Brown or Dax Hill be next in line? Or are there still more surprises waiting before training camp officially opens? The next few weeks could answer every one of those questions. And if the recent direction of the organization is any indication, Bengals fans may need to prepare for more headlines before the season even kicks off. Now it's your turn. Do you think the Bengals should lock up DJ Turner immediately before his price goes even higher? Would you prioritize Chase Brown or Dax Hill after that? And do you believe this offseason truly marks a permanent change in how the Bengals operate? Or is it simply a one-year shift driven by urgency? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below, because every fan seems to have a different opinion on where this franchise is headed next. Who Dey?